All right, we're going to work on the trigonometric functions, and on this first slide it shows the four quadrants. Here's quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Notice that the ordered pairs in the first quadrant, so from 0 to pi over 2, have a positive x and a positive y. The second quadrant, the angles in radian measure fall between pi over 2 and pi. They have a negative x value and then a positive y. Quadrant 3, the angles are between pi and 3 pi over 2. Both the x and the y are negative. And then the last quadrant, from 3 pi over 2 to 2 pi, the x is positive and the y is negative. Now looking at the second graph, there are the four quadrants, and notice that the sine is positive, the cosine is positive, and if you remember, tangent is taking the sine divided by the cosine. So I'm just going to go ahead and put x comma y equals positive and positive. So when you divide those, you're going to get a positive tangent. Quadrant 2, for the ordered pair, you're going to have a negative x and a positive y. For quadrant 3, your ordered pair is a negative and a negative, so notice that your sine and your cosine are both negative, and then when you divide them, you get a positive tangent. Last quadrant, quadrant 4, the ordered pair is a positive x and a negative y. So your sine value will be negative, your cosine value will be positive, and then your tangent, when you divide them, will be a negative. All right, so example 3 says, find the quadrant in which this angle will lie. So the first thing we give you is the sine of angle theta is greater than 0. So this means it is a positive sine, which on the ordered pair, it's going to be a positive y. So here's your x-axis and this is your y-axis. So it has to be a positive y in this quadrant and a positive y in that quadrant. All right, the second piece says that the cosine is greater than 0. So this means it's a positive cosine or a positive x value. So which quadrants do you have a positive x? In quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So we're looking to see which happens to be both of them, which is this quadrant here, quadrant 1. So which quadrant is this fall in? It falls in quadrant 1. So you might have an angle that looks like this. Somewhere in here, this angle will fall. Example 3, another secant of theta is greater than 0. So the secant is positive. So secant of an angle is found by its reciprocal of the cosine. So that would mean then the cosine would have to be a positive number or a positive x. So if we go to our x and y axes, you have a positive x in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So that would mean you'd have a positive secant and a positive secant. All right, second piece, saying that the cotangent is less than 0. So that means the cotangent value is a negative number. Well, cotangent is the reciprocal to the tangent function. So we want that tangent function to be a negative. So that would mean that you would have y over x be a negative number. So So if we see here, you get a tangent negative in quadrant 2 and in quadrant 4. So that would also mean then that your cotangent would be negative in quadrant 2 and in quadrant 4. So which situation has both of them? It's this quadrant right here, which is quadrant 4. So this angle lies in quadrant 4.